Alright, so here we are on the draw with a fine hand. Nothing spectacular, but I am going to keep it. And it looks like our opponent mulliganed to 6. But it does look like our opponent has kept their 6-card hand. So hopefully we'll have a reasonable game. Oh, whoops, we drew Black Lotus. So that is pretty nice for us. First card off the top of our deck. So we could use it to play Solemn Simulacrum here. We could also just wait a turn to be able to get out Gilded Lotus. I think that's probably better, is to just wait a turn on the Black Lotus. But hopefully our opponent... Okay, so we see Stoneforge Mystic. Let's see what equipment is going to be found. It's sort of Feast of Famine. So we are going to get to untap here and have a pretty nice turn. We drew Hangerback Walker, which was a card we actually didn't want to draw because we were going to most likely search for it with the Trinket Mage. But we can play Black Lotus here and still play Trinket Mage this turn. I think that's probably the play. And we first play the Gilded Lotus, of course, so yeah, I'm going to play Black Lotus. And it doesn't really matter what color we try to pop it for. So, alright, we got the Gilded Lotus in. That's good news. And we're going to play Trinket Mage here, getting Mox Diamond. I believe that's the only target we have left. So we're going to grab it from our deck and pass the turn. Notably, what we do discard to Mox Diamond, we can get back to with Crucible. But the Crucible is really here for when we draw Strip Mine, otherwise it's not that good. So we're hoping to draw Strip Mine, obviously. This is bad, though. It looks like our opponent is going to be able to kill our Gilded Lotus. That's unfortunate. But we drew a copy of Winter Orb here. So definitely have a few options this turn. I think actually getting the Crucible into play is pretty reasonable. But let's start with an attack. So yeah, let's play the Mox Diamond. And we're going to discard the island, but then we can play Crucible of Worlds and then get it back. Or play it, I should say, not really get it back, but... But it's pretty unfortunate that our opponent did have Council's Judgment to deal with our Lotus, and now... and now has a disc which can take out essentially our entire board. It also is going to stop our Winter Orb from being effective, so this disc is really, really good here. So we have a couple options, but I'm just going to play the Solemn Simulacrum here. And we can get a Forest. And we did draw Den Protector, so hopefully that ends up being important. If our opponent pops the disc, we're still going to get to draw a card off this Solemn. But it looks like instead our opponent might just decide to wait on popping the disc, which makes a reasonable amount of sense. So we do have Shelldock Isle in our hand, which we definitely can consider playing here. Our opponent could put in Sword of Feast and Famine into play, but that doesn't seem all that great, because then that sword could then die to the disc activation. But what our opponent could actually do, I don't know if they see this play, is activate the sword and then disc in response to then get the Sword of Feast and Famine into play. But yeah, I think the play here on our side is just attacking with the Trinket Mage. And we'll see if our opponent elects to block. Nope, no blocks. So let's play the Shelldock Isle. And we found a Blightsteel Colossus. So that's the card I'm going to choose to put under it. And just going to pass the turn. We'll see if our opponent actually has something here or what. Or is just waiting to pop the disc. So what our opponent could do is, with this on the stack, as I was saying, use the disc so that the sword is going to come into play. And everything else is going to bite the dust. And now our opponent has a pretty solid follow-up. Elspeth, and then making a soldier. That's pretty good. And our draw step here is actually Oath of Druids. That's an interesting draw step for sure. It would be a lot better if we were not facing down the sword as well, because our opponent can equip the soldier with the sword and then plus Elspeth on the soldier to then hit us for 6 and get this activation here. So if we were to play the Den Protector, that is another option available to us. We could play Hangerback for 3 as well, but none of our options, to be honest, are all that appealing. I think we might just have to get lucky off Oath here. That might just have to be our game plan. So, yep, I'm just going to put the Oath into play and pass back. It's not great. It's not a great spot for us, to be sure. Our opponent's most likely going to equip the soldier, and then, okay, it looks like our opponent's just going to simply attack us. And I think we want to discard the Winter Orb here. So let's do that. The other good thing about playing the Oath here is if we get to search for a creature, we're going to have less cards in our deck to get us closer to Shelldock Isle. But okay, this Bribery, that could find Sundering Titan. So this is absolutely terrible news for us. But we're going to just let it happen. Our opponent's predictably going to find Sundering Titan and blow up 3 of our lands. So, yep, that's what's going to happen. So, alright, we got a Wall of Blossoms. And nothing else really of note, but the Shelldock Isle is now turned on. So we're just going to pass and hope to somehow surprise our opponent here with this Blightsteel Colossus. So it looks like our opponent is going to get in there. We're just going to block a soldier here. And discard a card. Sure, we'll discard Villainous Wealth. We're basically hoping our opponent has nothing here. And we can put Blightsteel Colossus into play. And then win. But okay, our opponent has a counterspell. So yeah, that's going to do it. Our opponent had the counterspell, and we're going to go on to game 2 here. So I think we probably want to board in the Spell Pierce. Don't really need to board in too much else, though, I don't think. Our opponent's deck does look pretty solid. Just a straight-up blue-white control deck. So, gonna go with the Spell Pierce. Crucible is the card that I think we just want to cut. Although it's really good with Strip Mine. It's just not good when you don't have Strip Mine. But maybe we still keep it in. This is definitely not an easy matchup for us. Wall of Blossoms also doesn't seem that great. Yeah, we can cut the Wall of Blossoms. I actually like that better. So, yeah, let's submit this. And going to elect to play for first, of course. We have Black Lotus, but our hand isn't actually that great. I think we still keep it. Definitely hoping to draw something like Tezzeret. But let's start with this Shelldock Isle. Although I guess we could have started with an island, but the Shelldock Isle didn't really yield us anything. And unfortunately, we don't have a black source yet for this Baleful Strix, so we're just going to have to sit back and wait. And this isn't really what our deck is meant to do, but we don't really have a choice at the moment. We've seen a variety of interactive type spells from our opponent. We could counter this impulse, but I think I'm going to let it resolve. We saw Elspeth, 4 mana Elspeth earlier. We have also seen counter magic. So, while Impulse is definitely a good card, we've seen other stuff that could warrant spell piercing as well. But it looks like maybe our opponent is mana screwed. I'm not sure. We'll see in a second. I don't know. That would be weird if our opponent didn't have another land here. Alright, here's Stoneforge Mystic. That's going to not find anything, and our opponent is going to pass the turn. Well, this game is taking a turn, an unexpected turn. We'll see if it ends up being good for us because our hand is still quite bad. So our opponent's actually going to have to discard here. So I would suspect that Sword of Feast and Famine is the card that our opponent is planning to get into play. And the question now becomes, how much do we actually care about that? We definitely care about it somewhat, but I don't think playing Black Lotus and then sacking it to play Baleful Strix is worth it. So yep, our opponent is predictably going to equip and get in there with the Stoneforge Mystic. Our hand is really not what we would like it to be. But we drew Hedron Archive here. Not a bad draw step. So let's try to resolve it. Alright, it is going to resolve. So we're still in a weird spot where it's hard to say what we want to do. I think we do actually play this island and then pass. We'll see if our opponent actually has something here or not. Elspeth is a card that could very easily be still in our opponent's hand. So currently we have 8 mana, but Black Lotus would make 11. So I think we do discard the Baleful Strix here and maybe hope to draw a land here to be able to land the Blightsteel Colossus. And here's an Ancient Grudge. So we could Spell Pierce this. We could also sacrifice the Hedron Archive and still have the Spell Pierce around. So I think this is kind of a tough decision here. Alright, I'm going to go with my gut and just sacrifice the Hedron Archive in response. Because we could very easily just not hit an untapped land and then we're in an even worse spot. And wow, our opponent also has the Stomping Ground here, which is really bad for us. So we can just simply play Gruul Signet here and pass. And now we're still in a similar spot where we're playing towards either top decking, or we can discard the Spell Pierce here. But yeah, I mean, this just is not a good spot to be in at all. Our opponent's got 6 cards in hand, and we're playing towards the Blightsteel Colossus, but just it does not feel like a good spot to be in. So now our opponent's gonna go after our Gruul Signet with Ancient Grudge. We're forced to let that happen. And our hopes of getting this Blightsteel Colossus into play are basically almost gone at this point. So, yeah, I mean, it's just been a very weird game, and here's a disc. We could Spell Pierce this, but it's not really doing anything at the moment, so I'm going to let it resolve. And we actually drew Vidalcan Shackles here. So that was one of our better draws, for sure. So let's play it. And we can go ahead and take this Stoneforge Mystic. So now that our opponent has used their Ancient Grudge, we potentially have a shot at this. But unfortunately, our opponent not only has the Council's Judgment, but also has the 5th land. So that's going to be able to take out the Vidalcan Shackles. And I like that we held the Spell Pierce, because our opponent very easily could have not top decked the 5th land, but they did. Now our draw step is going to be Villainous Wealth. So let's go ahead and play our Black Lotus here. And I like just going for the Villainous Wealth, leaving up Spell Pierce, because we've seen Counterspell from our opponent already. So okay, we hit a bunch of stuff here, actually. So Memory Jar. Alright, so we hit a bunch of stuff. So we are gonna want to cast Tamiyo, and Tamiyo's is especially good. Let's see, Mystic Confluence. We are gonna want to cast that. So, yeah, we're going to cast the Mystic Confluence. And we're going to draw 3 cards with it. And we can put the Memory Jar into play. And we also might as well cast the Path to Exile on the Stoneforge, I think, although we don't have to. We could just as easily leave the Stoneforge in play. I think that's a pretty close decision. Alright, let's choose not to path the Stoneforge and see how this goes for us. And our draw 3 was quite good. We're now gonna plus Tamiyo on Stoneforge. And I like just playing Rashad Import and passing, leaving up Spell Pierce here. So pretty crazy turn of events right there on that turn. And now our Shelldock Isle is turned on. So that's something that's important to be aware of. And we drew Hangerback Walker. That's actually a pretty good card to have drawn here. So I like just running it out. And we can leave up. Actually, I like leaving up the Shelldock Isle so we can play the Temple if we want to. So we're going to play Hangerback here for 3. And we'll see what our opponent's got. Alright, this Secure the Waste is not going to resolve. We definitely want to Spell Pierce it. And at this point, our clock has gotten a little bit low. So just something to be aware of here. Gonna have to start playing faster. Here's a Fiend Hunter. That's pretty annoying, not gonna lie. So we drew Oath of Druids. We also still have this Blightsteel Colossus in hand. So got some reasonable options for sure. I like deploying the Oath here. I also like playing Den Protector face down. So let's do both of those things. Although we don't 100% have to play the Oath. I guess we don't have to. Still feels like the right play though. Yeah, let's play the Oath. And a Den Protector face down. And we can go ahead and plus Tamiyo on the Fiend Hunter and then pass the turn here. Memory Jar is definitely an important card to be aware of. I don't think we necessarily want to use it right now. Alright, here is a Phantasmal Image. So I would suspect Yep, that's gonna copy the Fiend Hunter. But what we can do here is we can turn our Den Protector face up and get back the Villainous Wealth in our graveyard. So I like that. But we are going to have to discard something to this sort of Feast and Famine hit. And I think it's just Rakdos' return. We can't cast it right now. It is a nice fireball option, but I'm going to go ahead and discard it. And we'll see what we can get off the Oath of Druids trigger. So we found Trinket Mage. So yeah, we're just not even gonna use the Trinket Mage. So I think we just fire off the Villainous Wealth here and see what we hit. Although we could actually activate Tamiyo first. We are close to being able to Emblem Tamiyo, which is nice. Alright, yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and go for the Villainous Wealth here. And it looks like our opponent, unfortunately, has Force Spike. That's pretty bad for us. But we're starting to pass the turn here. And we'll see exactly what our opponent elects to do. That's going to be a Swords on our Trinket Mage. That's bad news. And our opponent now is following up with Elspeth. But it looks like our opponent has targeted the wrong... I actually forgot about that too. I wasn't even thinking about the Phantasmal Image, neither was our opponent, so... The Den Protector is going to come back now to our hand, but this Fiend Hunter is going to come across. And it looks like it's going after Tamiyo, which makes sense. So we are going to get to Oath of Druids here, and that's going to get Solemn Simulacrum. We don't really even need to search for a land, so we're not going to. Alright, let's go ahead and cast the Charless Agent now. We'll see what we can find off of it. It's going to be a Mox Diamond. Which we don't even need to discard anything to, so I think we just plus Tamiyo again. And we're just gonna pass back here. Our opponent is now going to get to Oath of Druids. And I think we're just kind of in a bad spot, so I'm going to probably crack this memory jar and see what that's going to find us. But, oh, it looks like Frost Titan is what our opponent is getting off of the Oath of Druids trigger. Alright, let's go ahead, crack the memory jar. And we see the rest of our deck just isn't going to be able to cut it, most likely. We've only got 2 cards left in our deck. So, I was kind of hoping to hit the Sun Ring Titan off of the Oath, but that just didn't happen. Now, here's a Bribery. And we're actually close to being able to mill our opponent out. They only have 4 cards in hand. But we can go ahead and play this Temple. Or sorry, 4 cards in deck, I should say. So we're going to get the Blightsteel Colossus back. And yeah, I was just kind of cracking the jar to see if we had anything that we could do, but we really didn't. And Crucible's on top, so there was really nothing left in our deck that we were drawing to, and we're just going to mill out here. So I'm just going to go ahead and concede.